Hello once again, it's Matthew from Matthew North Music here with another video, and as ever, if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button, please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this sort of stuff, and if you find any of my videos at all interesting, feel free to share them on your own social media platforms. Well, today I'm going to be talking about something that, we used to take for granted, and that was in the high street. You could walk into any high street, any shop, be it Boots the Chemist, John Menzies, W.H. Smith's, as well as places like Comet, Dixon's, Curry's, and you could buy media. You could buy cassettes, video cassettes, reel-to-reel tapes, which up until the early 90s you could still buy in places like Tandy. But there appears to be only one shop on the high street now in the UK where you can buy cassettes. And I bought some today, and it's these. And I bought these from Argos. Argos at the moment are selling a pack of 4 Bush audio cassettes. I think they're 60s, and they're doing them for £5.99, reduced from £9.99. Now, they've been selling these for a while, but before lockdown, it was possible to buy other blank tapes. These ones here, the traditional UR90s by Maxell, which if you're watching this channel, you probably own some of these. They were selling these in Tesco's for £4.99 a pack up until the point of lockdown. I think I bought some of these not that long before lockdown, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So we're talking like late February, early March 2020. But they haven't had these since. And I think Wilko were also selling them. Now, they were probably just the end of line stock of these cassettes, because you can still find them online, new old stock, but I think they just had these in their warehouses and they were just clearing out. And that was kind of around the time where there was definitely an interest in cassette tapes, because up until that point nobody cared about them. But probably 2017 to 2019, there were artists starting to release stuff on cassette again. I've got some over there on my racks. People like, so I got a Seth Lakeman album on cassette. The last album by The Who came out on cassette. And these all came out before lockdown. So cassettes had started to become a thing. And then lockdown obviously made cassettes much more of a hobby to people, because people were starting to take an interest in stuff like this. Now, during lockdown, these were being brought to market, and these were being sold by Richer Sounds. These are Maxells, and it's a 5-pack, and they were selling them for £2, as what's written on the label. Now, these now are being sold for a lot more than that on, Amazon and eBay and stuff. And that makes perfect sense, because, 5 cassette tapes for £2 is ridiculously cheap. And, if you were to buy a pack of these for £5, you're not going to be ripped off, because, they're decent enough tapes. They're not the best, but they're not the worst. And they're certainly way better than any of the Chinese tapes that you'd find on sites like Alibaba and Wish and such like. But yeah, these came out, and they were selling these in Richer Sounds. They were limiting how many you could buy. I think you could only buy 5 packs of these to any one address. But they soon cleared out, and then they only sold them through the main shops until they ran out of them. So, that was a little bargain to be had in around mid to late 2021. But the ones I'm going to talk about today are these Bush things, because these are the only ones you can buy in the high street. If you know of anywhere else in the UK where any mainstream shops are selling new cassette tapes, I'd love to know what you can find. I know Poundland had their own brand of cassette for a while, and I did buy a pack of those, and they weren't particularly good. Certainly not as good as the Maxells. But anyway, I'm going to open a packet of these, and we're going to have a look and see what you get for, at the moment, £5.99. And one other thing to note at the moment, it's not just cassettes that it's getting harder to find. Even simple things like recordable CDs like these, especially ones that are printable, are getting harder to find. Where you would find these in any computer shop and shops like WH Smith's and supermarkets, they're conspicuous by their absence. So if you do use Recordable CD, now is probably a good time to think about stocking up on a few packets, because I don't know how long these are going to be available for before they sort of start trying to discontinue them, because a lot of desktop computers now do not have rewritable drives in them. Lots of cars don't have CD players in them, and lots of people don't even own Blu-ray or DVD players anymore because all they want to do is use streaming. So I would recommend, before the price goes silly, if you use Recordable CD, DVD, Blu-ray, etc., get yourself some discs and just keep them to one side, because in 5 years' time, possibly, they may well be 10 times the price that they are now. Anyway, onto the cassettes. And this is the choice then that we've had in mainstream shops over the last certainly 5 years, maybe 10. These Maxells, as I mentioned, that you could get in shops like Tesco's and Wilko. Then we had these Memorex, Maxell, sorry, not Memorex, cassettes that you could get in Richer Sounds. And now we've got these Bush cassettes. Now, these Bush cassettes, I was actually on the website for Argos because I wanted to buy a couple of things. And while I was there, I just kind of thought, what do they still sell that uses cassettes? And I thought they might have things like, you know, some cheap boom boxes, that sort of thing. And indeed they do. They do a range of cheap boom boxes. They do a range of little Walkman-y type things. Those, you know, those horrible little cassette to MP3 recorder things. And they do some portable CD players and various other things. And most of it is branded Bush. Now, if you don't know who Bush are, Bush were a very famous British electronics manufacturer, very well known for making things like record players and radios and television sets. The Bush TV22 is kind of the classic 1950s Bakelite television that you always see used as an icon for a picture of an old TV. And, you know, they were a great British company, but obviously they eventually closed down, but then the name was bought up by various other companies to put on their products. And most of the audio products that they sell in Argos have the Bush branding. So I don't know if Argos actually own the brand Bush, or whether Bush has just been licensed to various companies, mostly probably made in China. I don't know. But these are the cassettes. So they're a pack of 4. And it says here, 4 audio cassettes, 60-minute recording time, high recording quality, reusable. Well, that's handy that a blank tape's reusable. And it comes in this little plastic bag, which is kind of unnecessary, but unfortunately most stuff in Argos does seem to be sealed in a plastic bag. So we've got our box then, and it's in a nice shiny picture on the front. 4 audio cassettes on the back. It says, just the usual stuff, delivers a rich and powerful sound, record again and again. Fits into standard cassette players, easy to use. Well, that's handy that they're easy to use, because obviously you don't want to buy a blank cassette that's difficult to use, because that would make life, well, difficult. Anyway, let's chop open the seal on the top. I'm not even going to pull the plastic off, just chop it off. And inside the box we have our 4 cassettes. So let's get one of these out. And here it is. This is our Bush cassette. Now, there were Bush cassettes around in the 90s. Quite a few of my friends used to buy them because we used to always be taping each other's stuff, mixtapes, all that sort of thing. And they weren't great, but they weren't terrible either. I didn't think they were as good as TDK. But then you got to remember as well, some people didn't have great hi-fis in the 90s. You know, it was when stuff was becoming cheap. Auto level controls, and we were using things like boom boxes to make recordings. So, you know, we didn't know then what we know now, and certainly I didn't know about things like biasing cassettes back in the day when you were recording. But anyway, this is our tape, and you can see it's got a very, very basic J card in there. Let's open it up. Take the tape out, and the case is pretty decent. Quite thick plastic, actually. That's quite a solid case, that. So that's got a little bit of quality to it. It's certainly way better quality than the cases that those cheap Poundland cassettes had in, because they were like sort of this grey PVC plastic. So that's a good traditional case. We've got our J card, and yeah, it's what it is. It's very plain on that side. Reminds me a little bit of the old Boots cassettes, actually, from the 80s. And then here, it's got some basic information. This tape should be wound snugly on the cassette reels. If the tape is loose, carefully wind it on with one of the reels by gently turning one of the hubs. Keep the recorder head and pinch rollers clean by regular use of a good cleaning head cassette. Well, that is very good advice, and that is the reason why so many people had cassettes chewing up back in the day. They didn't keep their decks clean. Avoid prolonged exposure of cassettes to excessive heat, spelt hat, H-A-A-T, so I could have written this. Should be kept below 45 degrees centigrade, humidity, direct sunlight and strong magnetic fields, that's standard stuff. To preserve valuable or prized recordings, punch out remove the erasing prevention lug on the top edge of the cassette. So, actually that's fairly sensible advice on that card. I wouldn't disagree with anything on there, and in fact, that's more sensible to me than all this rubbish that you get on back of cassette tapes with, you know, frequency graphs and things that, you know, they probably never went anywhere near a frequency calibration equipment to look at the bandwidth. They just drew a picture freehand to make it look impressive. Whereas that's, you know, good information. So I'll pop that back in the case. We then have stickers. These are fairly ordinary, plain stickers. Nothing out of the ordinary there. And here's our cassette tape. Now, it's see-through. It has screws holding the shell together, which is definitely something of quality. And I much prefer cassettes with screws that hold the shells together. For one thing, if I've got a cassette and it's snapped or something, quite often what I'll do, if it's in a welded shell, I'll break the shell open, I will splice the tape back together, then I will get a cassette like one of these with a screwed shell, and then put the tape back in to this shell so I can make a transfer before it's lost forever. In fact, I've had to do quite a lot of that recently, so I actually keep one of these, actually, because these are screwed shells as well, and I've got one of those that I use purely for making backup tapes, recordings. Now, for a 60-minute tape, the tape looks quite thick, so it's not thin tape. Whereas I know there are some cassettes around that have very, very thin tape for 90s. So, you know, you get a 90-minute tape and it's actually got less on the hub than that. So, yeah, it's a pretty well-made cassette, to be honest. It's nothing flash. It doesn't have any logos on here. It just says Bush, but that's not Bush in the kind of the old-fashioned kind of Bush logo. In fact, the logo isn't even on here as it used to be. It just says, you know, Bush with a line under it. So it does make me think it probably was just a licensed brand name. Anyway, I guess the thing to do is just to see, do these tapes actually sound any good, and do they in fact work? So I'm going to take this over to the cassette deck and we'll have a little look. This then is the cassette deck I'm going to use. This is a Sony deck. It's a K511S, I think it's called. It's a fairly decent 3-head machine from the 90s. And I'm not going to go all Tony Villa and play music and let you hear the recording of the tape. I'm going to be a little bit more basic than that. And all I'm going to use is this CD here. This is just a test CD that I have, and it's got various test tones that range from 500 Hertz up to 20k. And what we're going to do is we're going to record some of these tones onto the tape and see how they perform. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to pop the cassette in and we're going to calibrate it. Now I'm going to turn my calibration controls to the middle and we will see how this performs. Okay, so I'll fast forward the tape. It's usually quite good to get it fairly forward. So, you know, we'll go on about 3 minutes or so. Okay. Then what we do is we pop the tape into record. I've got no Dolby on, and then I press the calibration button. And we can see it's not doing a lot. It's not doing a lot at all. Now, if I turn the level up, we get nothing. Now, if I got them on, no. Turn the bias up, it's doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. Well, well, wonder why that is. Okay, you might think, oh, this tape's now starting to calibrate. I actually have the bias turned all the way down, so it's full negative bias, and the level is turned right up full. So that's what happens there. If I turn the bias down a bit more to the centre, there's absolutely nothing, even at full level. So I'm turning the bias there, and yeah, it's pretty low. Turn the level down. So yeah, if the bias is, if they're wound to the absolute extremes, then it's just about calibrating. So I'm not holding a lot of hope out for this tape. Now I'm going to stop that, and we're going to go into the record mode now. So I'm going to record is now on, and I'm going to start my test tone, which is 1 kilohertz. So I'm now going to turn that up so it's on the naught, and if I turn the speakers up, you can hear the hum in the background, or the whistle rather. And if I go to monitoring the tape, that's not bad. That's actually, there's no drop in gain at all. That's pretty good, to be fair. This is now at 500 kilohertz or 500 hertz, and again it's sounding very hissy out the speakers, but you know, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. This is 10 kilohertz, and you can see there's obviously a drop in the level there. It's dropped down about 5 dB there at 10 kilohertz. 15 kilohertz, and it's gone down to probably about 14 dB loss. Again, there's the original. In fact, it's gone down a little bit anyway. Let's just turn that back up to where it was. So yeah, that's quite a loss at that frequency. So we can tell purely using the test tone disc that it's fine at low frequencies, but higher frequencies not so good. If I go to 18, that's source, let's turn it to match, and again that's pretty low. That's about the same, so yeah, not great. And I'm now going to go to 440 hertz, and again there you see there's not much in the loss at all. In fact, I can turn that down a bit, and yeah, that's pretty good. So I think if I stop that, we can safely say that it will calibrate, albeit very, to the extreme, and it will record. So I think I will just put a little bit of music through just to see what it sounds. I won't have this hooked up to the video so you can't hear it in quality, but I'll be able to tell you roughly how it sounds. So to test, I'm going to use an album I know well. It's one of my own. It's insert title here by Secrets for September. And the reason I'm going to use this is because I know every nuance of this record because I made it. And I can certainly tell you if there's going to be any issues. So we go into record, monitor the tape, and we'll just see what it sounds like. And yeah, it's absolute dropout city. It's hissy. Yeah, it is not great, but the frequencies are kind of staying there actually as I listen to it. It's certainly not muffly. And in fact, if I stop that and just rewind a bit, because I think I was hearing a little bit of sort of pre-echo because it's a three-headed deck. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do. I did say I wasn't going to do a video of the recording in stereo, but I will do. I will record 2 minutes of this tape off the CD onto the tape, and I'll stick it into the computer and I will put it on at the end of this video, and then you can kind of judge for yourself whether you think it's, you know, good or not. And if you want to compare it to the original, then you can find this track insert title here on any streaming service. So what's my verdict on these cassettes then? Well, they're not brilliant. They're okay in so much as you can record onto them and play back, but they're very hissy, a lot of hiss, and there is dropout on them. Would I recommend these? Well, you're kind of stuck really. They're probably better than the sort of cassettes you'd buy off Wish or AliExpress because you're paying more money for them. I mean, this was £5 for 4 tapes. Recording the Masters Fox, they are not, but then they're not the price of the RTM Fox. If the RTM Fox cassette, which is one of the only decent cassette tapes on the market of new stock, if they were at more of this sort of price, they would be a clear winner. But as it is, a 60-minute RTM tape is about a £5, but it's a good tape. It's as good as a D90, certainly. If you can find these URs at a good price, and you could probably get a pack of 5 like this for a tenner, they were way better, way better cassette. As I said, these didn't really bias up properly, and the sound's hissy and there's dropout, and they're not great, but they are all you can get. So I'm hoping at some point a manufacturer will come along, or even a company like Argos or Curry's might go to a firm like Recording the Masters and say, look, you make good quality tape, we want to sell cassettes, you're too expensive, if we buy enough off you, can you do us a price? And then we can retail them in our shops at a lower price. I mean, if you could buy a 5-pack of RTM Foxes for 10 quid in Curry's, that would be the perfect scenario. And who knows, that might happen. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, then please think about sharing it, liking and subscribing. And I'll see you on the next one. But in the meantime, I'm going to play you a couple of minutes of insert title here by Secrets of September, played off one of those Bush cassettes. Okay, I'm going to hit into record on the deck, and we'll monitor off tape. And I'm going to hit play on the CD. Okay, that's your 2 minutes of music. If you look at my computer there that's just recording the cassette, you can see the amount of hiss that's coming off the tape and the level of it as it's recording, which really isn't great. And if you hit the stop button, then you can see it's yeah, it's not brilliant.